Hey, it's me, Maggie J. Today with a recap and review of the 8th episode of Reservation Dogs Season 2. This one is called This Is Where the Plot Thickens. And I gotta admit, this kind of title really pulls me in. Reminds me of an old Fall Out Boy album. But that's a story for another time. Here in this episode, Officer Big goes on one hell of a trip, and Kenny from Burglecut Salvage Yard goes along with him. Where are they going? Into the woods. So this episode focuses mostly on Big and what he goes through on this particular day. We already know he's a real spiritual guy, connected to nature and the earth, and really believes in a lot of the old stories, and what we call legends or superstitions nowadays. We learned a bit about him back in episode 5 of season 1, when he took Cheese on a ride-along. Here, we're on the ride-along with Big, starting off in the pre-shift warm-up, or whatever they call this time when all the officers are briefed by their superior before they head out in their patrol cars. We get to see Officer Chubbs, who was supposed to be the one who Cheese went on a ride-along with back in the first season, but he called out sick and Cheese was stuck with Big that day. In the last episode, Cheese made me wonder if he was somehow responsible for Chubbs' absence, or if he was just trying to show off to the group homeboys. But you'll have to watch that review if you want more details. This episode is all about Big. He is nodding off through this briefing, but awake enough to overhear all that is being said. Several movies are missing from local rental stores, but I don't know why this is the business of the local police. You just charge their card more money and carry on, movie store. A shipment of frozen catfish has been stolen from Rob and Cleo's, something that seems to happen about every 6 months. The boss thinks it's the meth heads and tasks Big with going to check out what they're up to. He says he's got to go check out a Bigfoot sighting outside of town. They should send Chubbs, but the boss insists he goes, and Bigfoot can help him out. Big's fellow officers give him some shit about Bigfoot, but he is not embarrassed by their skepticism. Somehow, Big's radio in his cruiser is working today, but it hasn't worked properly either other time we've been along in his car, so it must be a great day. He shows up to the salvage yard and makes nice with the boys in the driveway. Big heads on into Kenny's office, aka the RV. Inside, we see Kenny, Ansel, and Kenny's brother, the chemist. I don't think he has a name. He doesn't need one. He's only here to add his own special blend of LSD and ayahuasca into bottles of energy drinks. Big steps into Kenny's office, and it is such a tete-a-tete between them, it's hard to figure out if they're trying to outdo each other or just match each other's energy. So I won't try to explain any more of their conversation here. It's worth the watch to see how it breaks down. Big is ultimately here to talk about the stolen catfish, but Kenny knows nothing about this. He offers the number of someone he knows who might know something, and while Kenny searches his Rolodex for the number, Big notices a crate of energy drinks beside him and helps himself. Kenny, Ansel, and the chemist all watch as Big imbibes a big old dose of LSD and ayahuasca. Ansel jumps up and leaves the RV. He wants nothing to do with this. The chemist starts clapping and looking at Big like he's so excited for him to become part of the club. Kenny tells Big what he's done, and poor old Big, he's so upset he's on drugs, he starts trying to puke them out. That's not going to get the job done, though, and things start to get a little weird, so Big runs off into the woods. Kenny can't let him go on this journey alone, so he takes a big swig of the soda and goes in after him. What a trooper. They did a really good job of making the woods look trippy and distorted. High five to the editing team on this one. Also, set design. This recreation of Big's childhood living room looks awesome out here, surrounded by trees and leaves. Big's grandma is out here as well, smoking as always, and getting after him for being high. Then the deer lady shows up and scares him. Suddenly, Kenny is pouring water onto his face, and that snaps him out of his vision. With a friend by his side, he's able to relax a little and enjoy the show. They see a huge copper statue coming out of the trees. It's 2 dicks swinging in the breeze. This scene reminds me of Jurassic Park. There's peaks and valleys to the chemist's blend, so there's times when the trip is all-encompassing and they can only lie on the ground and laugh. And then there's others when they're acting more normal, and Big is telling Kenny he's gonna arrest them all for making him do drugs. During one of their less trippy moments, they overhear chanting, so they follow it and stumble upon a secret society having an initiation ceremony out here in the woods. They all stand around this owl statue, and the eyes have been pixelated again, so we don't get cursed. Thanks, guys. Big thinks this is another vision he's having, but Kenny tells him no. this is actually happening. Big tells Kenny this must be the Order of the Midstreamers, a group of powerful Oklahomans who believe they are the rightful heirs of all Indian lands and the mineral rights for what's yet in the ground. Big and Kenny watch them as they chant, "Ours, ours, ours," and pour blood onto some naked people who are wearing these hoods that look like catfish. They are each then given a catfish with the head cut off, and they proceed to do something to them that makes Big pull out his gun and put a stop to this violation of nature. I'm not a fisherman or a catfish tickler, so I'm not sure what Kenny is talking about when he says there's something in the catfish's mouth that would make you not want to stick your sensitive parts inside. You don't have to explain this to me in the comments. I just wanted to include there was an explanation given as to why the heads of these fish are missing. Also, ew. For a secret society, they sure don't mind sharing details about their organization. Maybe because they have no respect for a tribal cop, or because they know that they can just sweep this under the rug and no one will believe a couple of druggies running around in the woods. But they take off their masks, revealing their hidden identities, and pretty much recite their mission statement. One of these catfish heads is the governor of Oklahoma. That's why they showed us that campaign sign earlier. This guy looks like a priest or something. Whoever wears the black and white collar thing. He tells Kenny the earth is a whore, and Kenny slaps the shit out of him. Thank you, sir. Then these two dudes show up with shotguns and put an end to the disruption of the initiation ceremony. They bash Big in the face and kick the crap out of these two. The midstreamers chant, "Ours, ours, ours," the whole time. While he's knocked out, and a few other times during this episode, Big has a flashback of that night that Cookie died. She's sitting on Rodney's motorcycle at the gas station, and Big offers her a ride home. She's been drinking, but assures him she's got a sober driver taking her home, and it's not that far away. He heads inside the store and sees Rodney stumbling around inside. Once Rodney leaves, Big asks the clerk if Rodney is drunk, and he says, "Oh yeah." Big heads out after the motorcycle with his lights on and actually pulls them over. But once Rodney sees that it's Big, not even a quote-unquote real cop, he takes off again, even faster this time. Big gets back into his car and tries to catch up to them, but in the next scene, we can see the motorcycle is on fire in the ditch. Rodney and Cookie's bodies are lying in the street, and Big is crying beside his cruiser. When Big wakes up, he and Kenny Boy are tied to a tree, blindfolded. Big tries to confess to him that he's not a good man. He let two people die, and he owes Kenny an apology. Kenny asks if he can call Big brother, but despite them sharing such a tender moment, Big hesitates and says, "Not in front of any of my friends." Then there is a scuffle near them and a shotgun blasts, but they can't see anything because they're blindfolded. Big is able to kind of see the ground in front of him, and there's a pair of hooves there and wide leg flared pants. The deer lady has come to rescue them. She unties them, they take off their blindfolds, and Kenny looks just in awe that she is there. She's not a stranger to him. She asks if he's been being good, and he tells her no, but he's been trying. She gives him a kiss on the cheek and then turns her attention to Big. He asks how she knew he needed help. She says Cookie told her. He looks heartbroken and relieved at the same time. She wraps him in a hug and then tells them to be good. And then she's gone. Her job is done here. Once they recover from being saved, they use Big's radio to call for backup. I'm not sure those directions are going to help backup find them right away, but now he and Kenny Boy both have shotguns, so they head back to the owl statue. The cult guys don't seem too fazed. They invite Big to ignore all this and come to a white people's party. And Kenny Boy takes offense. "Do I look white to you?" he asks, and everyone agrees. Yeah, you kind of do. And that is not his favorite thing to hear. The next scene is the dog sitting around at, I think, Bear's house, watching the news, and the top story is about a local light horseman and a man he deputized taking down a secret society for fornicating with stolen catfish and assaulting an officer. The mention of catfish fornication while they're eating catfish is just too much for them, and they all want to go wash their mouths out. Back at the big catfish bust, it comes down to just Big and Kenny left on their own. Kenny tells Big he's a good man, And then he puts his hand up. Big doesn't leave him hanging, and they bro fist, or whatever you call this move, and Kenny calls him brother. Big tells him he's lucky he doesn't take them all to jail. And then Big proceeds to walk home because he's still kind of tripping, and driving would be irresponsible in that condition. Such a good man. And that's the end of the episode. This one was a lot of fun, and I love the way that it looked. The woods can be limiting to work with because it's just green and brown and woodsy, but they did an amazing job making this not boring or bland and really making these woods a part of the story here. I didn't anticipate that Big was old enough to be part of the friend group and also a light horseman. He must have joined the force real young. But what a heavy burden for him to carry, this accident that took Cookie away. I'm not sure if this is the way that it was meant to be interpreted, but it makes me wonder if he wonders, would she still be here if he hadn't turned his lights on that night? Was he being too good of an officer and caused a reaction that took at least one young life away? If he'd have just followed them to make sure they got home, would anything have been any different? And then having to be the one to explain to others that she's gone, to tell her family, all of their friends, and others that have known both of them for their whole lives that she's not here anymore. You know what happens to the messenger. And then what happens if you find out that messenger was also chasing them when they crashed? It could become a contentious situation for that messenger, but I think because so many people already disliked or knew that Rodney was bad news for Cookie, and given that he was so drunk and others tried to stop them from riding off that night as well. Remember, Uncle Brownie fought Rodney to keep them from leaving that night, and now knowing Big tried to stop them from going any further, it really feels like this was inevitable. You know, like, every chance to stop this was taken, and they all failed. So, was it destiny for this to happen? Even if Big wasn't involved, would Cookie still not have made it home that night? That's kind of how I'm feeling about this, which leaves me kind of sad. I don't think that this was the intention of this episode, though, to leave me so sad, so let's get off this subject and talk about the real mystery of the episode. Is Kenny Boy native or not? Sometimes I feel like, oh, hell yeah, just look at him. And then other times, well, look at him. But he knows the deer lady, and not just from a story. And he's an advocate for nature and such. I won't even get into a conversation about the chemist he claims is his brother. So at the end of this episode, I'm not sure we got a straight answer, but now these two are brothers, and that is all that matters. Unless Big's friends are around. Seeing the deer lady again in this episode was fantastic. She was so beautiful, and the filming gave her this wispy, ethereal kind of look on screen. I was not surprised to learn Kenny is one of her boys, one she keeps an eye on, and he was so awed by her. It was adorable to watch Kenny turn into a bowl of Jell-O in front of her. Is he going to have a spiritual awakening after seeing her again? A question for the future, I guess. I love that they showed us both sides of her to remind us that she has an important job, to punish bad men. And those security guards were bad men, protecting other bad men. Then they reminded us that she is a compassionate creature as well, rescuing her good boys and encouraging them to keep being good, or at least trying to be good. I love her. I don't care if she's a killer. She's amazing. I really enjoyed this episode. We never did hear anything more about the horse that showed up at the salvage yard after the tornado, but it was fun to see what these guys get up to out there in the world of salvage. Big is such a presence here on the res. I wish he got a little bit more respect from others. He's got so many connections, but while he's wearing that uniform, everyone wants to treat him like an annoyance. Big deserves better. I'm going to keep on hoping that those around him recognize he's not the typical douchebag cop roaming around these streets. Maybe in season 3? Maybe. But that is about all that I have to say about this. I think I might have said too much, actually. It took me extra long to write this review, and it might be on the long side, so I hope that you enjoyed. Maybe leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you'd like to listen to me talk about more stuff that I watch on TV. I'm working on a couple of longer reviews that I hope to get done before the end of the year. Don't worry if you didn't watch the titles that I'm going to talk about. You know I'm going to tell you all of the details, so don't miss out on these videos that are yet to be created. I love living in the future and assuming I'm going to accomplish all my goals. It's the greatest. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, y'all stay safe out there.